Welcome back to From the Shedend. Welcome back to the podcast. Theo, first of all, how are you doing? How's things?
Yeah, good. Got back to London yesterday and I avoided all that heat wave weather that the UK has had over the last few weeks. But like I just told you offline, my house just felt like an absolute sauna when I got back. So I had to open up all the windows to get a bit of fresh air in. But yeah, it's been good. Been enjoying the Club World Cup, or certain aspects of it at least. Bit of mixed results with Chelsea. It's kind of all to play for going into our final game. But yeah, I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. It's like you, trying to stay cool. It's been mental. It's like it's been good weather, and then suddenly you go from up north. It's now probably about 15 degrees, but it's coming with like these mad winds as well. So it's just literally like two elements of weather. One that you feel like you're in a different country, and then one where you feel like you need to wrap up and put hoodies on, as you can see. But no, it's been good. Been enjoying the Club World Cup to an extent. We'll talk about Nicholas Jackson and some others in this episode. But before we do that, please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. So if you hit the Linktree link in the description, if you're watching on YouTube, you can already do that. You're there. Make sure you smash the subscribe button. If you're on the audio version, the Linktree link is in the description to join our YouTube channel as well. Let's start with the Club World Cup, because that's the nature of this episode. But good start for us against, I think it was a good start against LAFC last Monday. What was your thoughts on the game in terms of how we played, and how was you shocked that we didn't take that momentum then into the next game against Flamengo, which we'll talk about a bit later?
Slightly, but all due respect to LAFC, I think Flamengo are a much better team as well. So I was always expecting a tougher game against Flamengo than it was going to be against LAFC. Quite surprised to see Olivier Giroud didn't start in that one, because I think he would have definitely caused us problems. But no, 2-0, two decent goals as well. Pedro Neto's, the assist from Jackson was brilliant, and then Pedro Neto's finish was really good as well against the World Cup winning goalkeeper and Hugo Lloris. So he's got to give Pedro Neto some credit. And then the Enzo Fernandez goal as well is what we've been seeing him do all season. It's just a kind of like late burst into the box and managing to tap it home. 2-0 clean sheet, got the job done. That being said, I do feel like LAFC did have some decent chances to maybe score, maybe get an equaliser, maybe even get a consolation goal. So I think the warning signs were there that maybe defensively we were still a bit fragile and it wasn't all perfect. But I think can't really complain too much when you look at the result and the score. 3 points, and then we were kind of level on points with Flamengo at the top of Group D. What were your thoughts on that game overall?
I was impressed. I liked the lineup. I thought the lineup made sense. Obviously, at the time, Noni Madueke was playing. I mean, that was probably the worst. The only critical thing I can talk about in that game was Noni Madueke's performance. But I thought, I still think naturally he's more suited on the right than he is on the left. So I kind of give him a bit of leeway in terms of what I expect from him on that left side. And I think for me, Pedro Neto is probably more suited. So that was maybe something that Maresca just didn't understand, or I don't know. He changed it obviously for the Flamengo game. But no, I thought the game was good. It was good to see some of the substitutions. We got to see Asugo. Liam Delap made his debut for us as well and got the assist, which I thought was a brilliant crossing for Fernandez. So I thought it was a really good sort of opening game for us, a good solid foundations to hopefully bring some momentum off the back of what I thought was a really good end to a season in terms of our performances in the Premier League. So I was happy with it. I thought Sanchez played well. I thought he pulled off some really good saves. I was impressed. I really was. I wanted to ask you though, because Cole Palmer has been the topic of discussion in both games, also the Flamengo game, and he's had to come out recently and almost suggest that Maresca isn't sort of stopping his progression in terms of being creative. But do you feel there is a sense of a little bit of that he's not really being given the creative freedom to play his football how he wants to? He spoke about frustrations in the season where he's been told he can't really take players on and he has to pass the ball. Do you think that's something that he's now coming a bit more clearer, that he is frustrated at his football?
I mean, it just seems like we've seen two different Cole Palmers this season, because I know this Club World Cup was kind of seen as a continuation of the 2024-2025 season. But I think back end of 2024 was probably the best Cole Palmer we've ever seen in a Chelsea shirt. We're remembering the 4 goals against Brighton, the chip finish against Wolves, and he was almost carrying us at times during those games. And then as of January onwards, he's kind of just gone a bit missing. I know he's only got the one goal since he's only got one goal, I think, from open play. I think he's got 2 goals in January and then hasn't scored one except for the penalty against Liverpool. So he's kind of like, his goals have kind of dried up slightly. And I know he got the man of the match in the Conference League final. But other than that, I just feel like it's not really the same Cole Palmer. And he does, like you said, it does seem like he lacks a bit of creativity. He doesn't have that creative freedom that we're so used to seeing Cole Palmer have. You often see him get the ball and then he looks a bit like, I don't really have any option. Then he passes it backwards rather than taking a man on. And he also looks a bit like frustrated, or his body language seems a bit lackluster and not his typical self. So I just want to see Cole Palmer get back to, the best of Cole Palmer that we saw during the back end of 2024 and throughout the 2024 calendar year. And more in the Flamengo game than the LAFC one. I just can't really remember a time where I actually saw him on the ball as well. I don't know if it's fatigue, it's the really hot conditions are playing a part as well, because I know maybe some of the British footballers aren't really used to that, or Premier League footballers aren't used to these really hot and sweaty conditions. But yeah, he really struggled in that Flamengo game particularly, and I just want to see him get back to having that same creative freedom that we're so used to seeing Cole Palmer have.
It's a bit of a concern. I think I think it's a concern, but I also think our expectations of Cole Palmer, and when I say ours, I mean Chelsea fan base, it might be too high. I think we got to see Cole Palmer, in his first season, hit some brilliant goals and numbers and stats and all the rest of it. But we have to remember, first of all, the age, the amount of football that he's played, but also, I don't want to say the lack of experience at that high level. But this was when he hit those numbers, it was his first full season in the Premier League. He wasn't starting for Manchester City. So I think he just had a really good, honeymoon period when he came to Chelsea. Mm-hmm. Maybe he has found things slightly difficult. He's had the change of managers probably hasn't helped. Tactically, things are set up slightly different to since Maresca's come in as well. Not trying to make excuses at all, because I think even for the level of Cole Palmer, I'm talking about some of the Conference League games, or even like now against LAFC, we should see a little bit more from him as well. It's not because of his age that he shouldn't be trying, or the fact that he's now not. You can't use that excuse that he's new into the Premier League or he's new into the squad. He should be a regular who's impacting the game for us, and he's not doing that at the moment. But I think it's a bit of a concern. I think if we're being honest, I think it's a concern that he's not impacting games as such as he should be.
Yeah, you raised a good point, because only like 2 years ago he was at City. He was a rotation player. He was playing the cup games, maybe the odd Champions League group stage game. The next thing you know, he's at Chelsea, and he becomes Chelsea's poster boy. Chelsea's main player within almost a year. So he's gone from almost 0 to 100 in like a matter of months in a way. He's on the front of all these Burberry adverts across London as well. So he's really become this kind of like global face of Premier League football and Chelsea Football Club as well. And I've said it before, and I still believe that he doesn't really feel pressure, or he doesn't really feel the nerves, but maybe he's starting to kind of feel like there's expectations, and maybe he's slowly kind of having a bit of fatigue creep up on him as well. But also we've got to just realize, like, Chelsea Football Club isn't just about Cole Palmer. There's other players that need to step up as well, the likes of Madueke, who you spoke about, Enzo Fernandez, Jackson a lot of the times as well. Hopefully Pedro Neto, we've seen a really good burst of form on his behalf. But yeah, it's time now that some other players step up as well and kind of release a bit of pressure off Cole Palmer as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think let's talk about Nani Madueke's performance against LAFC, because I think it was probably, I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand. I get it a little bit, because I think it was against Nottingham Forest, and maybe some of the other games in the back end of the season in the Premier League where he played on the left and he played well. I think it might have been the Liverpool game where he was on the left as well, and it worked. He done well, but I'm never a fan of someone who's naturally going to drift into their, onto their right foot and, cut in, or they're just not ready to receive the ball because of just how they are positioned in terms of how they want to receive the ball. And a lot of that was happening with Nani Madueke in that game, and it was just an awful performance. And you do have to question. You've got, the likes of Tariq George on the bench that eventually came on, but trust one of those players. Trust someone that is naturally better in that position. What was your thoughts on Madueke, and was it probably the wrong call for Maresca not to start a Tariq George or someone else in that position?
It's frustrating, because I think on paper that probably was one of our best lineups. Obviously Liam Delap would maybe be on number 9, but you need to give him a bit of time maybe to find his feet. But I think Neto and Madueke make sense to be the wingers, but yeah, like you said, just Madueke's performance against LFC was just so frustrating to watch. He was trying to take players on and losing the ball and not really being able to cut in like he likes to do. And it's frustrating as well because he seems to do everything right, and then at the end he either takes that kind of touch too far, he loses the ball, he passes it backwards. So yeah, he's a frustrating player, and I feel like when we both did our predicted lineups for the Flamengo game, I'm pretty sure we both had him dropped for that one after that performance, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, frustrating player. And it's getting to that stage now where him and Nicholas Jackson, there's a lot of links, moving them, linking them to other teams. And I'm not going to be honest, I'm not really against it anymore. If they both kind of find a club elsewhere and we maybe get someone like a Gittins, a Rafa Leao, a Nico Williams, not that we're being linked to many of those names yet, but I wouldn't be entirely against it. I really wouldn't.
I'm with you on that 100%. I really am. I think we have to question, we spoke about Cole Palmer, but we do need to see, and I know Nicholas Jackson, I thought, played well against LAFC. I think, some of his hold-up play was brilliant. The runs that he was making was superb. The assists, the pass through was brilliant as well. But we still need to see more. I mean, he's doing all the right things, but he's not scoring the goals. And I think that's what he's in the job. That's his job in the team, essentially, is to score goals. We're not seeing that. So I think they need to step up a little bit more. One thing I wanted to ask you as well, key thing, we'll talk about Nicholas Jackson separately, but just in the LAFC game, Mark Cucurella, Tosson and Reece James all picked up yellow cards. So it's a bit, and we spoke about discipline on this podcast, probably since Graham Potter was here, probably even before then. We were speaking about the lack of discipline and, the number of yellow cards certain players will pick up, and Nicholas Jackson picking up a straight red after almost 5-10 minutes on the pitch in the Flamengo game. But do you think that's a concern for Maresca going into a new season where we don't really have the depth at left back? We spoke about just Marc Cucurella being the only left back at the club so far going into next season. But do you think this is a concern for Maresca, not just in the Club World Cup, but the lack of discipline some of these players are able to retain and control themselves on the pitch?
Yeah, I mean, it dates back to, I think, even that Pochettino season. I think up there with Burnley, we were the team, I think, with the most yellow cards, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it seems something that needs to be kind of corrected. I don't know if it's a bit of spatial awareness or kind of discipline on the pitch in terms of how the players are positioned, and maybe team talks before from the captain and at half time, and what needs to be said in terms of kind of keeping a clear head. But yeah, I think you listed a few of the names, and I think after the Flamengo game, there's a few more that have been added, if I'm not mistaken, that are one yellow card away from a suspension. And then we've got a big squad, but we don't have that much, like the Cucurella position left back. We've spoken about it before. It's a bit of a concern because we don't have someone who can naturally fill in there. We might see Gusto as a makeshift left back, potentially even Ashampong. But is that really what you want to see? Probably not. We know that Vega doesn't want to play left back. He wants to be a centre back, and he's not even in the travelling squad for the Club World Cup. But yeah, hopefully it's something that can be amended. But something else I did notice with these Club World Cup referees is they're a lot more quick to give yellow cards as well. They don't really think about it. They don't really kind of discuss things with the players. I think within a matter of minutes, players are getting red cards, yellow cards. We saw Real Madrid, I think yesterday, Asensio got a red card straight away within, I think, the first 6 or 7 minutes of the game. Jackson got a red card within matter of minutes after coming on. And I think, was it the Flamengo, the LAFC game, where I think it was a South American referee or something, but he was just giving the yellow cards straight away, out of his pocket within almost a split second after those fouls were made. So I also think hopefully back in the Premier League, there'll be a bit more kind of leniency towards some of these decisions. But at the same time, I'm not going to contest many of these yellow cards because some of them probably are more than deserved, if anything.
Yeah, 100%. Let's before we move on, let's talk about Sugo, who came on. What was your thoughts? I thought he looked very comfortable on the ball. I know he didn't get much minutes, but from what we got to see, a small glimpse of him in the midfield, he looked like a good player. And I know it's a hard measurement to go by, but he looks comfortable. Looks like he could fit in.
Yeah, sometimes I don't like to use this word, but sometimes these Chelsea players come in and they have this certain aura about them when they do the interviews, what they say, and he just seemed to say the right things in that first interview he did. I think he said that his favourite Chelsea player growing up was Ricardo Carvalho. He compared himself to Michael Essien, I think, and this is kind of the things that Chelsea fans want to hear. Yeah. And I like his physique, I like his personality, I like kind of how he's come in. Maybe Chelsea fans don't really have high expectations of him, He spent, I think, last season on loan at Las Palmas in La Liga. From the Sporting Academy, where we've signed a few players from in the last couple of years. Renato Vega, Giovanni Quenda is coming there, who's had a brilliant under 21s Euros, by the way. I think he's scoring for fun out there. But yeah, I like the look of him. He only had a cameo against LAFC and probably would have maybe come on if it wasn't for Jackson's red card as well, which is a shame. But yeah, hopefully we get to see more of him during this tournament and next season as well, because I still think there's a bit of a question mark on between him and maybe Mamadou Sarr if these players are going to stay to be part of the squad, or if they're going to go out on loan to get more football and game time. Because I know there's also Dewsbury Hall, there's Lavia. If he stays fit, I might be ahead of him in the pecking order. But yeah, I like the look of him. Strong, kind of like just seems like a no-nonsense midfielder, which sometimes is what we need at times.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to Flamengo. Unfortunately, we have to talk about Flamengo 3-1. I'll be honest, a lot of Chelsea fans, including yourself, called it. You said it was going to be a really difficult game. I think sometimes, and I said it on the match preview, that we underestimate how good South American teams are and how they treat the Club World Cup with the respect that it duly deserves as well. It was a tough one, though, because we started the game really well. And I've just praised Robert Sanchez, but I'll be honest, I don't know where he was in that game. I don't know where his head was. But what was your thoughts? 3-1. I mean, does it show a true reflection of the performance that we put out on Wednesday?
100%. I feel like you could just sit here and come up with excuses, but I feel on the day Flamengo were better than us. They wanted it more than us. Felipe Luis had a game plan. I think apparently he had 4 sleepless nights of just studying Chelsea to kind of like find like where their flaws were and to be able to come up with a game plan to defeat us. And he executed that perfectly. So credit to him and credit to Flamengo, because they deserve the 3 points. For us, I think the first half was decent, but again, the warning signs were there. Sanchez's distribution was appalling, kind of giving the ball away. We got maybe lucky of the goal. I think it was a bit of kind of like, I think it's Danilo and maybe another Flamengo defender, maybe trying to like pass the ball between each other, and then it kind of ricocheted off one of them, and Pedro Neto's breaking it in front of goal and manages to score. But the second half for me was just like a calamity of mistakes defensively for all 3 goals, really. It's just like poor marking. Sanchez is just a bit like undecided if he wants to come out and claim the ball or not. Doesn't even dive for some of the goals. I still feel like we spoke about it before, but these South American teams were unbeaten before this game. It just goes to show how kind of like underrated and how we underestimate some of them. I think now that's changed, because I think it's Brazilian teams that are still undefeated, but I think a few of the Mexican teams, or maybe the Argentinian teams might have lost. But I think there's a few factors that probably explain why they've been so strong and performing to this level. But I think their season started end of March. So they're still kind of like fresh from all the games that they've played throughout the season. I think the conditions are more suited to what they're used to. You probably back in Brazil, the conditions are quite warm. They're probably quite familiar to playing in these kind of warm and like sweaty conditions, whereas you can tell some of these Premier League players are really struggling. They need the water breaks. We're probably more likely to make early substitutions than they are. Yeah. And I think the final one is, I mean, I know this for a fact. So I was in Brazil in April. These Brazilian fans, players, this is their World Cup. Like the game against Chelsea would have been Flamengo's World Cup final for them. And you sent me that video of the fans outside the stadium celebrating and kind of like, I was before kickoff even. Whereas for us, it's like, if you're not a Chelsea fan or you're not a Man City fan, I don't really know many of my other friends watching the Club World Cup. And some of them just see it as like a bit of a pre-season kind of friendly tournament. But I'm not one of those people, because I want to perform. I want to win it. I want to get to the final. Yep. But for these South Americans, it's like they'll sell their cars, they'll mortgage their houses, they'll get the money to go out to South America, to the US and watch these games. There's videos of the Fluminense fans in Times Square partying. They rented a boat to go down the Hudson River and just partied in the boat all throughout the day. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of them wanting it more. And but yeah, I think from our side, it was disappointing, really, really disappointing, because it just didn't really seem like the same Chelsea that maybe finished the season quite strongly, and the same Chelsea we expected maybe to get a result after the LAFC game and take that momentum into that match day 2 of Group D.
Yeah, it's a good assessment, and I agree with it. I think it's, I mean, I did a sort of pre-match live stream last week before the game, and the team news came out, and I was almost in disbelief because I thought Malo Gusto was going to be on the left wing. It didn't get any better because Malo Gusto was right back, but then you had Reece James in the midfield, which I kind of understand a little bit. Had we not had Asugo, Lavia, Andre Santos on the bench, we had options on the bench. So I just couldn't understand what the thought process was behind it again. And I think start with a strong squad, but make it make sense as well. Why have we got two right backs, one in midfield, one at right back, and the one that hasn't been playing well at right back as well? It was just a really strange game. A game where when you go 1-0 up, you're never confident that you're going to go out and see the game through. It was almost like, okay, we've got the goal, but we need another 2 or 3 just to make sure that we get the win. And we never done that, So credit to Flamengo. Like you said, Felipe Luis had the oomph about him to go and prepare for this game properly. And one thing I do think, and this isn't just Chelsea, I think this is some of the other teams as well in the tournament, is that they're not taking it serious. I don't feel like we are taking this tournament as serious as maybe Fluminense or Flamengo or Barca. We're just almost there because we're there. And it's probably a bit of a, you're cutting into my holiday time sort of attitude. That's what I get from some of these players, that they're just there because they have to be there. They're obligated to be there contractually. They've got to be there. They'd rather be in Mykonos or Dubai or wherever, because they're just 100%. They're not playing to the level that we know.
And the proof is in the pudding, because Maresca, after the match, mentioned he saw this game as an opportunity to try something new, like experiment something new. And I think that's what we saw with James and Gusto right back. But it's the second match of probably the most important match of our group stage.
It's the big one.
Do that, maybe win this one, and maybe do that in the game against Tunis in the final day.
That's almost your throwaway game.
Yeah, but don't do this in the second match against Flamengo, which is probably our most important group stage match. And I don't know if that's an excuse for losing, but for me, that's poor from Maresca, because and that just kind of echoes what you said about the players and maybe the manager not really valuing this tournament or not taking it seriously. They want to kind of like tinker with the tactics and experiment with the lineups and tactics. But yeah, it's poor from our kind of side to not take this tournament seriously, in my opinion.
I want to ask you as well, because this is obviously the second game of the group stage, and we still haven't seen one of the best players last season playing in France, which is Andre Santos. He hasn't kicked a football for us yet. And I worry, because I feel I do worry that we might lose him. Maybe not this season, but he will not be wanting to sit around and, waste the season of his career when he could go and play football elsewhere. There's a World Cup coming up next year. He's not going to want to sit around and play second fiddle to anyone in that Chelsea team. And I'll be honest, I don't think he should be. I think he should be a starter in our team just off the back of his season. I want to ask you about Petrovic afterwards as well. But what do you think about Andre Santos? Still hasn't kicked a ball for us. Do you think he should and will be potentially starting the final group stage game Wednesday morning?
He should be, yeah. I mean, especially when you're playing Reece James in midfield. For me, like if you're starting with your 2 winning Conference League final midfielders, Caicedo and Enzo, who have formed such a solid partnership, maybe I can understand. But if you're playing Reece James in midfield and you've got Masugo, Lavia, Andre Santos on the bench, that's for me when these players are starting to think to themselves, hang on, you're playing right back in midfield and I'm sat on the bench when I've just been Strasbourg's player of the season or nominated for Ligue 1's young player of the season. Then that's when you start to raise question marks and think about your future. But I'm really hoping maybe Maresca will learn from his mistakes and maybe fielded a squad of players that are hungry to prove that they can, be started at Chelsea Football Club. And that for me is the 3 guys we just named, and Petrovic potentially as well. But it seemed like Petrovic really wanted to be first choice, and Maresca couldn't guarantee him that. And that's probably why he's been left back home, which for me is silly as well. So silly.
Yeah, which is exactly the case. I was reading on The Athletic that he apparently had conversations with Maresca and the sporting directors and the club, and basically said, I want to be number one. I deserve to be number one. And apparently the club have told him they can't give him that assurance. Now, I find that watching the season we've just had and the biggest debate us fans and maybe something that, the Chelsea boardroom have had is, who is our best goalkeeper? Well, he's on loan at Strasbourg. Bring him back, give him an opportunity. What's the worst that can happen? You still need to go and get a goalkeeper in the summer. I think this would have been a really good test to see how well Petrovic could do for Chelsea.
100%.
it looks like the door's shut because, for him to say, actually, I'm not travelling with the Club World Cup squad, don't pick me. Let's get me a move. Let's move me from the club. That tells you everything you need to know, that this club is not aligned to what the vision and the project and essentially what the manager wants and what the board want. There's a lot of misalignment, and that is dangerous going into a season where expectations will be higher than they were this season based on the Champions League, the Premier League, domestic cups. We need to win one of those this season. But it starts with the Club World Cup for me. I think if you're in the Club World Cup, go and win it. Go and get your opportunity to get to the final. And I think if we lose or draw on Wednesday, you might know this because you're normally quite good at who we can potentially have. I'm pretty sure it changed. It was at one stage Benfica or Bayern Munich. Oh no, it was Benfica. Now it might be Bayern Munich, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think from what I've understood is if we avoid defeat on Wednesday morning, Tuesday night, whatever you want to see it, against Tunis, we're guaranteed second spot. And that would mean we play the winner of Group C, which would be Benfica, Boca, Bayern, but most likely Bayern Munich, I believe. But going back to what you were saying about kind of the goalkeeper situation and Petrovic, I mean, I think we were both kind of in agreement that when we weren't willing to pay, I think, the 4 or 5 million difference in valuation for Mike Mignon, the silver lining was, we still got George Petrovic, who was, Strasbourg's player of the season and had such a fantastic season. And that kind of made me think, like, we're not desperate for a keeper if we've got this guy. But now if we're not willing to have him as a starter, that means we're stuck with Penders, Slanina, Jorgensen and Sanchez. And then the new thing that I'm reading now is between Petrovic, Sanchez, Jorgensen and Penders, one of those 4 will be sold. And one of those 4 will be loaned to Strasbourg. And in my head, I feel like Petrovic is not going to accept another loan to Strasbourg. And he's not going to accept being second choice, is he?
He'll be sold.
So he'll be sold, in my opinion. Penders will be loaned to Strasbourg. And we're going to be stuck with the same 2, Jorgensen and Sanchez again. And let's be honest, like, we still kind of got the Conference League final and we're still living in that honeymoon period of that where we kind of won it and we saw silverware, and Sanchez has quite a solid end to the season. But do you really want to be going into a Champions League campaign? We're going to be playing the likes of Bayern Munich again, Barcelona,
Vinicius
Paris,
Junior, Mbappe.
Vinicius Junior, Mbappe, Désiré Doué, Harry Kane, Musiala, with Robert Sanchez, who can't even pass the ball to a defender in front of him.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, that's why I'm a bit worried, really, really worried. And I'm kind of hoping maybe this Club World Cup would see a bit more optimism with our goalkeeper situation. And for now, maybe, especially in that Flamengo game, it's kind of proved the opposite, if anything.
You still have to remember we've got Kepa on the books as well. I know he won't start for us, he won't play, but I think...
He's going to Arsenal, isn't he?
Yeah, I think it's a done deal. Or he has gone, actually, hasn't he? I think he might be. So
it's official. It's not official. It's very close. He's probably waiting to come back from his holiday. But it's that funny story of like all those players that went, was it to... I can't remember whose wedding it was. I think it might have been Kepa's wedding. They all ended up signing for Arsenal. I think Havertz was there.
Was it Jorginho?
Was there. Yeah. And now all those players probably like formed some kind of weird pact at that wedding.
Got a WhatsApp group going.
Most likely, yeah. But we know what happens with Chelsea players who go to Arsenal, and more often than not,
doesn't end well.
Doesn't really end well. It's more of a retirement place. We saw Willian, David Luiz, Petr Cech, Sterling. Whereas the opposite when they come to us, Fabregas,
Champions League.
There we go.
Say no more. I wanted to speak very quickly about Nicholas Jackson and obviously Liam Delap as well, because Liam Delap, we start with him. He came out and said that, he loves that sort of aggressive side to the football that he plays. And one thing he can do, this is a report that was in The Athletic recently as well, that he loves that part of the game where he can get into people's faces, he can make it a bit aggressive, but he knows how to control things. He did get booked against Flamengo, to be honest, but is it I know it's a concern, a discipline we spoke about, but we now have lost Nicholas Jackson. Straight red card. He was on for the best part of 5 or 10 minutes on his birthday, of all days to get sent off. But he also misses the first game of the Premier League as well. I spoke about this last week. And he'll also miss a lot of the December period because of the African Cup of Nations, depending on how Senegal do. He could miss a fair chunk of January as well. I still think there's an argument we need to bring in another centre forward. And I like Liam Delap. I think he played well, but we can't go into the season with just those two.
That's quite sweet of the ref to give Jackson a card on his birthday, wasn't it?
Yeah. Wonder how much he really got it from. Yeah.
Yeah, probably WH Smith or I don't know. But yeah, I'm in agreement. And I mean, even wouldn't really be against the idea of even us selling Jackson and bringing in a world-class number 9 now. Because I just feel like his recklessness is he always sees red. That's now twice now. Maybe we forgave him slightly for the game against Newcastle. He came back and scored in the Conference League final, even though it was put on the plate for him from Parma. But to do what he did against Flamengo, for me, was just almost like he seemed frustrated that we brought in another number 9. I wanted to prove that he's like the alpha male and wants to still be the starter and the regular guy that can be leading the line for Chelsea. And it just was so reckless, so reckless.
It's a dangerous.
I feel like
it was a dangerous.
It was dangerous. I think no Chelsea players had any complaints about it. No fans had any complaints either. I feel like the lapse numbers against Flamengo weren't the best, but I always watch football with my eyes, and I feel like I've liked what I've seen from him so far. Yeah. He seems to like make those runs. We saw his assist for Enzo. He almost scored, I think, quite soon after the Pedro Neto goal as well. And I like to watch football.
It was a good tackle away from him. It was coming in. It was a really good tackle, but no,
you might even force the keeper into a save at one point. But yeah, I like the lap. I think Mark Gui's still very young and could benefit from a loan. So yeah, to kind of go back to your argument, I would completely agree that we could bring another number 9. I think the latest talks now is Kolo Muani from Paris, who I'm not really that optimistic about. But knowing us, we'll be linked to every player that under the sun, every name under the sun now. So it'll probably be Sesko tomorrow. It'll be I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we're linked to someone else, and then a Vlahovic or someone like this in the next couple of days as well. But I won't repeat myself because I sound like a broken record. But Gyökeres is out there to be got. We've got Champions League football. He seems to have fallen out a bit with the hierarchy at Sporting. Because he's asked for this move, and now maybe they're still negotiating his buyout clause. Yeah. But yeah, and I feel like if he's got a choice between United and Chelsea, and we've got Champions League football, sure, maybe there's this former coach Amorim. That might be a bit of an appealing move to him. But you come to Chelsea, you live in London, you've got Champions League football. You're probably going to start ahead of the likes of Delap and Jackson. Yeah. So yeah, that'll be my logical signing for me.
I agree with you. I think we should be going all out for him. Whether we can get that deal done, I don't know. But I do think, for me, it's a case of what worries me is that Maresca still defends Jackson. Now, there's times where, as a manager, you don't throw a player under the bus, but you do have to approach things with caution. And what you're saying in the media, probably whether he's saying that in the dressing room, I'm not sure. But to come out and still defend him after that red card on Wednesday night or whenever it was, it's not, you can't justify that. You can't. There's nothing you can say. Just say that he made a mistake. There'll be an internal conversation. I think the last red card against Newcastle, I think he said he didn't speak to him until like 24 hours afterwards because he was that annoyed with him. So, come out and say that. Don't defend him because some things are just, you can't defend him. And that was one of those moments. And, how many more chances we're going to give a player like Nicholas Jackson, who hasn't been scoring, 20 goals a season, hasn't been creating assists, 1 in every 3 games or whatever. He's not really the striker that we thought we were going to get when we signed him. So how many more chances do we give someone who's now entering what will be his 3rd season at the club? I agree with you. I think maybe we start looking at, shopping him to Juventus, which is what the latest link is, I think, or what I'm hearing in the reports of transfers, and Napoli as well. Although they're after Nunez as well. So let's start thinking of that. I mean, wherever he goes, I'll drive him myself personally. I'll drop him off to the nearest airport. I'll come and collect him and drop him off. But I think, we need to look at options. I think, even just for if we do keep him, the African Cup of Nations, I don't know if you got to see the fixtures. We'll maybe talk about that on the next episode. But the fixtures that we've got in that December period are not easy fixtures. And it goes into the January. We've got City, the 3rd of January. We've got Newcastle early on in December. So it's going to be key, tricky fixtures that we're going to need some depth in the attack.
And tie that in with Champions League as well, because the Champions League now goes into January, which it wouldn't do the previous seasons, doesn't it?
Yeah. So there'll be a lot to talk about in the next episode in terms of the fixtures and what you think. I did the live stream when it came out, and I was excited at first, and then I think that suddenly turned from excitement to a bit of stress and worry when I looked at some of the. We've got a really good run in at the end. I like our run in at the end of the season. We've got Liverpool third game from last as always, but there are some really good fixtures for us to look forward to at the end. But we'll talk about that on the next episode. Before we go, let's have a quick think about our game Wednesday morning, early hours. I wouldn't say it's a must win, but I want to see a lot more improvement. What's your thoughts going into that game, and who would you select? What would your predicted lineup be?
I'd rotate slightly. I think we have to remember that when you play Premier League football, you have a game maybe every week. The games come quite thick and fast in this Club World Cup. You get a game every 3-4 days. So I'd rotate for this one. I'd rotate in a goal even. I'd maybe play Jurgensen, perhaps. I'd put James back at right back. I'd go with Tosin and Badiashile. I'd give Colwell, Chalobah a rest. Keep Cucurella at left back. I would go with Andre Santos and Caicedo. I think we're all Chelsea fans really want to see that those two midfielders play alongside each other. Potentially I'll actually give Cole Palmer a rest even, maybe. And have Enzo as the 10 with Neto and George and the lap up front, perhaps.
It's not a bad shout. It's not a bad. I mean, we've got to go with the lap up front, unless we decide to play sort of Mark Reed. But I'm just looking at the table now. So it is actually a game where it has significant importance. We're joint second, if you want to call it that. Flamengo are currently on 6 points. So this is actually more at stake than I realised, to be honest. I think this is a game we have to win.
Well, like you said, it's not a must win because we can technically, I think, still draw and qualify, if I'm not mistaken.
We just can't lose.
But just for our momentum, though, we need to be beating Esperance Tunis and kind of taking 3 points and taking that momentum into the round of 16 as well.
Yeah. I don't think I would swap things around as much, but I would make some changes. I think I would definitely swap Jurgensen in goal. I think we've got a 28-man squad. Let's use it. So I'd put Jurgensen in goal. I think I'd have to put Reece James back at right back. I am debating whether we put Josh Ashiempong there for this game. But again, let's respect the team that's in front of us and we're playing. So let's put Reece James there for now. Maybe swap things over in the second half. I'm sticking with Chalobah, Colwell as the two centre-backs. Marco Correa as the left-back. My two in midfield is going to be Caicedo and Santos, like yourself. Enzo is the 10. Wide areas, I think I'm going to go left Tariq George, right Pedro Neto, Liam Delap up front.
So the only difference we have is the two centre-backs. I think. Is that right?
I think, I'd like to keep the consistency in the defensive line as much as possible. I think your defensive line, I want to keep that consistency throughout the tournament, if possible. I'm
not against it, but sometimes we just look a bit more calm and reassured of Tosin.
I agree.
He seems a bit more experienced, and I feel like Chalobah and Colwell, even though it's been maybe our strongest partnership across the season or since January, against Flamengo, the two just seemed a bit like lost puppies in a way, and they seemed a bit lost when as soon as Flamengo would cross a ball into the box.
I noticed a lot of the offside traps as well weren't working. I think one of them actually was Caicedo's fault. He was at fault for one of the goals. He was too slow to come out of the box. But I agree. I think Tosin, maybe that leadership, that little bit more experience, he does bring that to our defensive line. But I also think Trevor Chalobah, my worry is I think he goes in the summer, and I think this would be a brilliant time for him to show why he can't be sold and why he's almost untouchable in terms of trying to sell him in the summer. So I'd love him to play and put in some decent match winning performances from a defensive perspective. But I think for me, Maresca just has to stop playing players that aren't fitting into how he wants to play. And by that, I don't just mean putting Madueke on the left and James in the midfield. To change things tactically if it's not working. Flamengo outplayed us on the pitch last week. You have to change things and adapt. And I know the red card changes that. But even so, before that, tweak things. We've got such a big squad and players that can interchange and swap, that are on the pitch at the time, change things, make something happen. So, I don't know, big test on Wednesday, massive test.
I know we're going to wrap up soon, but did you have time to see Flamengo's, what they tweeted after the game? They've now deleted all those tweets.
I've blocked them.
Yeah, it did piss me off a lot. I'm not going to lie. The one with Cole Palmer, that I didn't mind that, but all the others where they changed our badge and they were like photoshopping this and that, I was a bit like, this is a bit disrespectful. I thought
I'd allow it if it was the final and they beat us in the final, but to just beat us in the group game, I know, like we said, it's a lot of South American teams, take the Club World Cup serious, and it's almost their World Cup. It's the biggest game of the moment, but it's a group stage. Yes, they're going to qualify, but to me, it was just a group stage game.
Yeah, I was close to blocking them too, and a few of my mates just sent me like these reels on Instagram or memes that they saw, and I was not in the mood. I was really not in the mood. Yeah.
It's just nonsense, isn't it? Just absolute nonsense. But let's hope we get a win. Let's hope we end our group stage in a bit more lighter, a bit more brilliant football to be seen off the back of our defeat to Flamengo last week. Prediction-wise, I don't think we've done that.
No, it's quite hard actually.
It is hard.
I think Tunisia have a goal in them, but I think we'll win 3-1.
That's confident. I'm gonna go 1-0. I think it's gonna be a difficult game. I really do. I think it'll be a difficult game. I think you made a good point that the temperatures, the climates over there will be. I think our players are struggling with that a little bit, but also it really depends on what Maresca does in terms of the lineup and who he goes with. So I think many of our Maresca games have not been high flying, scoring 3-4 goals for a very long time. So I can't see a big score line, but I do think we'll get the job done.
Yeah, I just watched the Man City highlights this morning where they were just scoring for fun in a way. So I've got that fresh in my mind against maybe a North African team, but yeah.
Let's not jinx it.
Let's not jinx it. You're right. Yeah.
Oh, crazy. But anyone who's listening, if you hear this part of the podcast, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I feel as always to have you back on here and back to usual schedules for a short while. But yeah, we've got a lot to talk about in the summer. We've got a lot planned coming up. So if you're here as a new listener, if you're here as a new watcher on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe. Notification bells must be on so you do not miss any of the content that's coming out over the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode.